Hello, and welcome back to the second lecture of the Intro to Android Development. Today we're going to be talking about views and layouts. So, some quick announcements. Homework 1 will be due on the 28th, and if you're not currently enrolled in Student Center or CMS, you have to be enrolled in both to get your grade. Please message us on Slack as soon as possible. Homework 2 will be released after this class, and it will be due on October 4th. So let's run through the file structure in an Android project. You have the XML files. So these are going to be located in app.resources.layout. You should have encountered these in your first homework. Your program files are going to be located in, it's still going to be called /Java, no matter if it's Java or Kotlin, but Java, and then in the file structure, it's going to be com folder, example folder, app name. In Android Studio, it will condense it nicely down to com.example.whatever. This is going to be the name that your app will take on the Google Play Store, and it's a unique identifier that Android knows your app by. Yeah. So you have, So underneath each app, you have the app screen, which is composed of the layout, and then the program file underneath. The XML is, well, XML. It's a hierarchical tree structure going from, the thing at the most level and then going in. So views on top of that, views inside those. It has one of the most important things is the attribute tag. So Android:ID. This is the ID of the view you're currently using. And it's what your program will know it by or find it by. ID tags allow Kotlin to define the object. If you're willing to use the same name that you have in the ID, then you can just type in the variable, the ID name, and Kotlin has already bound it as the variable name. If you want it to be something different, do val or var display equals find view by ID is the command you call, and then you put in whatever is the ID. So here we have the ID text view, and if you find that ID and set it to display, display will become a pointer to that text view and a way to manipulate anything in it. View groups. So these are ways to group your views. The most lightweight is called the LinearLayout. It's the most simple, really light on performance, commonly used in industry. Either horizontal or vertical. A horizontal one groups has things, can put multiple things next to each other, and a vertical one will put them above each other. Extremely lightweight, extremely quick, but not much customization. RelativeLayout, we're not really going to talk about this because it's practically not used anymore. Because it allowed for two-dimensional relative positioning, had all its elements, moves all its elements using the gravity tag, but is pretty much dead in favor of the ConstraintLayout, which is the new one that Google really likes to use and will be the default view group that shows up when you create a new empty activity. Relatively performant and better flexibility. You can just tie things to other objects inside, and it will constrain it depending on how you've set up the other things you've tied it to. You constrain it to its surroundings by binding it to the bottom of the whole page. You do it by toParent. And if you want to constrain to another object, you give it an ID. And you give it room to breathe by putting margins in, or if you tie something to both sides, it'll just slide into the middle. Yeah, really convenient. So FrameLayout is another one. It's used for layers. You use it as a container for things. You put things inside and they'll layer on top of each other. You put a FrameLayout inside FrameLayout and you can layer things on top of layers on top of layers. And they all, you just put things in FrameLayout and they layer on top of each other. And it's really convenient because you can now have things that go above the thing instead of just being beside it. And of course, you have the most important, some very important views in app development, things that allow you to scroll and allow you to put lists inside your app. They're scrollable, they're dynamically modifiable, they're memory efficient, and we won't be talking about them because they are far too complex for the early days. We'll be getting into those in lecture 4. Yeah, I'm sorry. So you have input controls as well, views to use for, user input. So edit view is the one used to input and edit text. That's the one that you can type a message into and then, use to build a form. Seek bar is used to represent a range of inputs. It's a slider. So you can use it for, well, anything you'd use a slider for. A checkbox, radio groups, switches, spinners, they're all here. So yeah. Text view, seek bar, checkbox, radio group, you can only select one, switch, and spinner. And to implement these things, such as the most simple of them, a button, you put it into the XML, and then in your Kotlin file, you see the ID has automatically been bound, and you set an on-click listener, and anything you put in here runs when you click the button. Incredibly convenient. Of course, when you get into more complicated objects with other kinds of data, you might want other kinds of listeners. So edit text has an add text change listener, which, given the code here, will do things after text is changed, before it's changed, and when it changes. So, yeah, quite useful. Of course, there's also other resource files, drawables, that contains the images and icons for the app. These are your SVGs, your PNGs, your whatnot. Font, custom font files. Layout has all the layouts and the XML files. Bitmap contains icon images in different sizes for Android to process. You usually won't have to deal with these. Raw, you can contain audio and video media to play on the screen. And values for colors, dimensions, strings, styles, things that you want to reuse over and over again, or want to change in one singular place, or want to put in one singular place to change without having to edit the XML files themselves. And so resource files will use something like this, where it's an XML file, has a ton of, individual set variables inside, and then you select them in the XML by doing Android, whatever, Android.background, in this case, to set the background of something, color, and then at color, whatever color you want. Similarly, you can also do these things in the code by going get string if you want a string, get color if you want a color, get resource in general, and then r dot whatever kind of ID it is, and then dot the name itself. So in this case, if you want to get a string from the strings.xml file, you do get string, r.string dot, and the name you put in there. And that concludes this lecture. Yeah, so this was a quick overview on how these things work, and we'll go on to Leslie with the demo.
I will be showing you how to build a simple color app from start to finish, and that will include both the XML file and also the activity file. So the app that we will be building today is this color app that you see here. It has a color box in the middle, and it has 3 input boxes, each box for one color in RGB, so red, green, and blue. And as you input different hex colors, the color of the box will change. So we'll just start off by creating a new project. And we'll pick empty activity. We'll just call it demo 2. We'll make sure that our language is in Kotlin. Click finish. And you'll see that our files are already populated with a main activity and also an activity main.xml. So we'll be editing the layout file first. And you'll notice that some of the text is in red, and that is okay because the Gradle is still building. But once the Gradle finishes building, it won't be red anymore. And you'll also notice that this this XML file is pre-populated with a constraint layout. And a constraint layout is the recommended layout for Android Studio. And I think you'll see why once we start building out this layout. So if we go back to our app, we see that we have a color box and 3 input boxes. We will first create the color box. So let me delete this text view. And that color box is a view. So one thing to notice is that every single component within this XML will have the attributes width and height. And these are the 2 attributes that you have to set for any single component you make within XML. So in our case, we just want, let's just set it to 400 dp. And I'm going to open up split view as well so I can see it. And this is 400 dp. Okay, seems fairly large. Let's actually do 200 dp. And then you'll notice that the box floats to the corner. This is because we didn't add any constraints to it yet. So we'll go to the design view, and for constraint layout, every single component within the constraint layout needs to have at least 1 horizontal edge and 1 vertical edge constraint. So in our case, we'll constrain the left side, the top, and we also want to center it. And the way to center it in constraint layout is to constrain both opposite sides. So you'll see that when I constrain the left and the right side, the box automatically centers itself. And we also want to add 100 dp margin. Nice. And I'm also going to add an ID to this just so we can reference it in the activity file. So equals at plus ID color square. Let's do split view again. So you can see our box here. Let's just give it a color so that we can see it when we debug. So Android background, color accent. Now we'll create the 3 edit texts right here. Actually, let's create this in the design view, because I think it'll be quicker. So we'll just navigate to text, plain text. I want to pick a number since we only want to display numbers. And I'll drag 3 of them on the screen. So for the first one, I want to constrain the top to the bottom of the square, and I want to constrain the sides. So you'll notice in this screenshot here that all the edit texts are equally spaced out. And there's a really neat way of doing this in ConstraintLayout. It's something called chaining, where you can apply a chain style to it, and then the Android Studios will automatically equally space out everything for you. So let me drag 1 more edit text on here. Okay, let's go back to our code. So you'll see that it created or added all these attributes for us once we drag the edit text to the screen. And for the most part, that's what we want. We want to edit the ID. So let's do edit text red. And if you want, you can actually click into these attributes and see what they mean. So I clicked into EMS because I don't know what it means. And it just says, makes the text view exactly this many EMS wide. And we look on a split screen, we'll see that it's actually quite wide. And if I scroll down, I'll see that there is an attribute called minimum EMS. I think that is what I want. So I'll do minimum EMS. And let's set it to like 4. Yep, that looks about right. Input number. And then we'll repeat the same here. So for the second edit text, I'll just be edit text green. And then the third one will be edit text blue. and we'll copy over this minimum EMS line. So you'll notice that in the last two edit texts, the editor automatically added some attributes for us. And we don't really want these attributes because they set the absolute X and Y of the edit text, and that's not what we want. So the issue with using the visual editor, like what I did before, is that sometimes it will add extra attributes that you don't need, and you have to be careful about making sure to delete them when you actually go back to the code. So let me just delete these. So I want to constrain, let's start the first edit text. I want to constrain the start to the parent. Parent is the outer layout, which is the constraint layout that you see at the top level. So that seems right. And I want to constrain the right side. So let me copy this over to the second edit text. So we want to do n to start of edit text green. You'll notice that there's two versions of the ID. One of the ID has a plus sign in it, and then one of the ID does not. You would add a plus sign when you're creating a new ID for a component, and you would remove the plus sign when you're referencing that component, as you see down here. And it's interesting that they use start and end instead of left and right. The reason why is because they want to make this constraint global for all locales. So if there's a language that reads from right to left, like Chinese or Japanese, then this layout will automatically put everything in the right places depending on like which way the language reads. Okay, that seems good. And then let me copy this over for the other two edit texts. So I want to start and edit text red. This one will be now blue. And I also want, that seems good. This one will be green, and this one will be parent to end of. And I think we're gonna apply a top margin to these edit texts so it looks slightly more natural. So let's just do Android margin. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna copy that over. Nice, it looks pretty good. And then you can see how it changed by just clicking on the component in the design view. You can see that it's changed this way and everything's equally spaced out. Now we want to add the text red, green, and blue. One way we can add in the text is to also create a chaining style like this, like what we did previously with the edit text. Or we can constrain, oh, this is a sneak peek. Or we can constrain the text view to the edit text itself. So I can show you how we do that. So let's create a text view. Oh, it froze. Actually, let's create it in the design view. So we'll go here. I want a text view. Let's drag it in. And I want the top to be constrained to the edit text. I want the left side to be constrained to the left side of edit text and the right side to the right. And let's just add like 16 margin. And you can see that this will center the text view to the edit text itself instead of centering it relative to the parent. So we like this way better just because if we create a chain with the text view, we're not guaranteed to have it perfectly match up with the edit text. So let me set this to red. So be red. Oh. Text. And then we'll do something similar. We'll just copy over for green and blue. So green text. and this is blue. So let's do. Oh, why do you have plus signs in it? Let's delete these plus signs. They do not belong here. Nice. So this looks about right. Oh, this does not look about right. Nice. Okay. You'll notice that this text right here is highlighted yellow. This means that it is a warning. It also means that Android Studio has a suggestion. So it says we have a hard-coded string red. Please use string resource. And that is a good idea. So let's extract it. And let's do the same for green and blue. Generally, you want to get in the habit of using strings.xml. Oh, this one should be blue. And the reason why is because if you reuse a string in a lot of places, setting it in strings.xml means that if you were to change a string later on, you just have to change it in one place instead of in all the places that you used it. It just saves you a lot of time. So this looks good. Let's just run it on our device to verify that it's working as expected. Nice, this is what we wanted. Nice. Okay, now we'll write the actual logic for the screen. So we'll go inside main activity. And you'll see that they already created an onCreate method for us. This function runs when the activity first creates itself. And you also notice this line set content view. This is the line that actually ties your layout XML to this actual activity. So our XML is called activity main, and you can see that we are setting this activity to this layout. So the first thing we have to do is to create all the variables that we need for these different components that we'll edit in the logic. So we need one for the square and 3 different variables for the 3 edit text. Let's do late init bar color square. It's a view type. Late init bar, let's see, red edit text. And now we'll have to set the variables to their IDs in the XML. So color square equals define view by ID r dot color square. Ooh, nice. Okay, so there's 2 things we have to do. The first thing is that we have to set an onClick listener to the edit text so that anytime we input a new number, the color of the square will change. We will also have to put some sort of method or listener on the square so that we regenerate the color. So let's write the function that regenerates the color first, since it seems easier. So we'll create a private function called regenerate color. And then within this method, all we want to do is to set the square to the current color. So we do color square dot. And you see here, when I type in the period, there's a whole list of functions that we can use. And what is really nice about Android Studio is that they suggest a lot of different functions for you to use. So even if you're unsure about maybe what function you want to use, you can usually just guess by just guessing random functions. So in this case, I know I want to do something related to color. So I can type in color, and there are all these different functions that show up. So in this case, I know that I want to use set background color. And you can see it takes in an int. So I want to create color type .rgb. Nope, GB. And there's a few options. Nice. So what is really nice is there's a tooltip that shows you what the parameters are. So I want one for R, so for R, G, and B. In this case, we want to take the numbers straight from the edit text. So we'll do red edit text dot text. This is what I want. The problem is that this text, I guess, object is an editable object. So it's not actually a string. It's also not an int. But we know from here that it only takes in a float or an int. So I first need to convert it to a string. Oops. To string, and then back to an int using these extension functions. And then let's do the same for the other two. So R, this one will be G. And you'll see that the line exceeds this limit line right here, which means that the line might be too long for like GitHub or just too long for reading. One thing you can do is that you can highlight the entire line, do Control-Shift-Alt-L, and then just reformat. And it'll automatically format everything for you. And this is just really nice for linting. Okay, nice, this looks good. Now let's write the function for the listener. So I guess we'll do red edit text dot add text listener change. That's what I want. And then I'll do object text watcher. This might not be, let's see, why is it complaining? Implement members, yes. So we have to implement these three members, which means we have to override them. So let's just click OK. Oh, and they just give us one. Nice. Actually, I don't need this because they're in the error. Why is it complaining? Let's do the rest. Okay, so these three methods we have to override. But the only method we actually care about is this onText change. So for the rest of these, we can just leave them blank. Same with this one. So onText change. So the text that actually gets inputted in is P0. We can look inside here for the rest of them. But for right now, I guess we won't. So you'll notice that there's a question mark on this char sequence. This means that it could be nullable. But we only care about the text if it's not null. So we can do p0.let. And anything that runs inside here means that p0 is not null. Let's do text. Is never used, we name to, that's fine. And text. So currently a string, toString dot to int is greater than 0 and text dot to string dot to int is less than or equal to 255. So these are bounds of the hex numbers. Then I want to regenerate color. And let's see. It says that we can convert this into a range check. Let's just do it. Nice. Looks good. And now let's run it. Okay, let me type something. 2, 3. Oh, we can see that the color is changing. Nice. So, oh, looks like the app crashed. Okay, let's see why it crashed in logcat. So let's go in here. We're gonna go to error. And let's see, this looks unrelated to us. I have no idea what module manager is, so we can just keep, oh, excuse me. Oh, I think my computer froze for a second. Okay, so let's keep scrolling up. Module manager, we don't care. Okay, this looks relevant because I recognize this. So for input string empty, it throws an error. Well, I guess that makes sense since it can't parse an empty string and turn it into an int. So in this case, we want to do a catch up here. Let's just do text dot is null or empty. Maybe is not empty. And okay, nice. Oh no. I think we'll just wait for it to Gradle build. Okay, let's type in 34, 34, 34. Okay, that looks all correct. When we delete, you can see that nothing happens. Let's do 255, 255, 255. Oh, and it's white. Nice. Let's do Oh, that makes sense. I forgot that we only set the text changer to the red. Okay, so in this case, we're almost done. Now we have to set it to green and blue as well. I mean, one method that we can use is that we can just copy and paste this whole chunk of code and just replace red edit text with green and blue. But we want to prevent just having redundant code in the code base. And one easy way to reuse code is to create a function for this. So let's actually create another private function called private fun setup edit text. And then it'll take in and edit text. Edit text. Seems good. And then we'll just copy and paste this in here. So and let me delete this function up here, or this chunk of code. Let's do red, edit text. And let's just rerun this. my god. Why did it crash? Line 40. One way we can prevent this is just setting the text here. So we can just do it, guys. Text. Oops, wrong component. So let's just set default text. So text equals to 0. So the square should be black when we first run it. Nice. And let's edit this one, 36. Let's do something bigger. 150. Oh, and it changed color. Nice. Let's do 200. Ooh, okay. Nice. Seems to be working. Nice, and we finished our simple color app. So in the transcript that we wrote up, I also go into details about how to recreate this entire layout using LinearLayout. So in terms of creating layouts in Android, there's not one right way of doing it. You can choose to use any view group you want. So you can choose to use ConstraintLayout or LinearLayout or whatever you feel comfortable with. And in that example, I'll show you how to create the exact same layout using LinearLayout. But you'll see with that example that it is much more difficult to create it in LinearLayout, and I don't want to go through it here just because it might take up a lot of time. But what I will show you is how to set a different layout for landscape mode. So oftentimes, let's see what happens when we rotate this to landscape mode. And I click rotate. So as you see here, like in landscape mode, it looks very different than portrait mode, and a lot of the stuff we had before is now hidden. So it's very common for developers to develop a different screen for both landscape and portrait mode, and I'll show you how to easily do that in Android Studio. Oh, please rotate back. So for the sake of saving time, we'll just create a new layout. Let's create a new layout in here. So layout resource file, and we'll just call it rotate main. And then we just want to drop in a simple text view and constrain all sides of it. Nice. And then in our code, let's change this to portrait. Yes, we want to extract it and put it in strings.xml. Okay, and it's actually super easy to create the landscape version. So all you have to do is to right-click on res, and then we're going to create a new directory. And we're just going to call it layout land. And this is really important. You have to call it layout land. You can't call it whatever you want. So let's create this. And you'll notice that the file doesn't show up, but if you switch to project in the file explorer, then we just open up our files again. It shows up right here. So we'll create an XML right here. And we have to call it the same title as the portrait version. So because we called it rotate main before, we'll call it the same here. Rotate main, seems good. Nice. And then we'll do the same thing where we add in that text. Zoom in. Oh no, I think it froze again. Okay, we're good. And then this will be landscape. In this case, it doesn't really matter since we're not referencing the text view in the actual code. But what you'll notice is that, actually, let's just try it with this. Let's just rename this file to activity main and we'll see what happens. So let's do refactor, rename, activity main, refactor. No. Yeah, we know it exists. Nice. And then so let's just run it. Right, it looks good here, but let's see what happens when you rotate it. And we just want to click on this little button in the corner. Oh, and it looked like the app crashed. So let's look into the error here. It said the error was that it couldn't find view by ID color square. And the reason why is because we use our landscape XML and we don't have color square here. So when you're setting two different XMLs for portrait and landscape, it's important that anything that you reference in your activity also exists within your XML, otherwise your app will crash. But in this case, it's okay because we're going to rename it back to rotate main. So let's refactor. Rotate main. Refactor, no, it's fine. And then in main activity, we will want to set the content view to rotate main. And then we also need to comment out these lines so that we don't get an error. And let's rerun. And let's rotate this back. Nice, so you see portrait here. And when we rotate it, you see landscape here, which is nice. That means that the two different XMLs work. So this is just a really quick way of how to set different layouts for different orientations. And that's it for the demo. So going through this demo should help you for most of the homework. And if you have any further questions on the homework, you can come to our office hours, or you can DM us on Slack, or you can drop a post in #office hours for help.